The aroma of roasted turkey and freshly baked pies wafted through our home, mingling with the faint sound of holiday music playing softly in the background. I stood in the kitchen, my hands deftly arranging the centerpiece on the dining table, a vibrant display of red and green, with pine cones and holly berries nestled among the candles. It was Christmas Day, a day I had envisioned filled with laughter, joy, and the warmth of family. Little did I know that the very foundations of my seemingly perfect life were about to tremble beneath me.
"Sarah, can you set the table? The guests will be here any minute,"
my husband, Mark, called from the living room, his voice a mixture of urgency and impatience. "Of course, honey," I replied cheerfully, a smile plastered on my face as I grabbed the plates and silverware. Yet, a slight unease gnawed at my insides, an unsettling feeling I couldn't quite shake. I glanced at Mark as he walked past, his expression unreadable, a cloud of tension hanging over him like a dark shadow. He had been distant for the past few weeks, and I couldn't help but wonder if he sensed the storm brewing beneath the surface of our lives. As I placed the last fork down, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the window. My chestnut hair fell in soft waves, and my festive red dress hugged my curves just right. I looked the part of the perfect wife, but behind that facade lay a secret that threatened to unravel everything. I shook my head, pushing the thoughts away. Today was supposed to be about family and celebration, not guilt and anxiety. The doorbell rang, echoing through the house, stirring me from my reverie. I hurried to answer it, my heart racing with excitement. My parents stood on the doorstep, beaming smiles beneath Santa hats. "Merry Christmas, sweetheart," my mother exclaimed, pulling me into a warm embrace. "Merry Christmas! Come in, come in." I ushered them inside, my heart swelling with joy. The living room soon filled with laughter as relatives trickled in one by one, each bringing gifts and holiday cheer. I exchanged hugs, laughter, and the obligatory small talk, but the back of my mind was plagued with thoughts of Jason, my co-worker, and the man I couldn't seem to shake from my heart. I had promised him I would meet him after dinner, a promise that felt like a ticking time bomb. As the last guests arrived and settled in, I caught Mark's eye across the room. He was talking to my uncle, but there was an intensity in his gaze that made my stomach twist. Was it concern? Anger? I couldn't tell, but it sent a shiver down my spine. I forced myself to look away, diverting my attention to the kitchen, where the turkey sat, golden brown and glistening. "Sarah, the food looks amazing!" my sister Emily exclaimed as she joined me in the kitchen. "You really outdid yourself this year." "Thanks, Em. I just wanted everything to be perfect," I replied, forcing a laugh. But perfection felt like a fragile illusion as I felt Mark's eyes boring into me from the other room. "Is everything okay with you and Mark? He seems a bit off," Emily asked, her brow furrowing with concern. "Of course, just holiday stress. You know how it is," I said, waving my hand dismissively. "We're fine. Just fine." But even as I said the words, I felt the weight of my truth pressing against my chest, a secret that could shatter the facade I had built. Dinner was a cacophony of laughter and clinking glasses, yet there was an undercurrent of tension that I could sense. As the meal progressed, Mark remained mostly silent, his eyes flickering between me and the family. I tried to engage him in conversation, but he responded with short, clipped answers, his mind seemingly elsewhere. "Mark, are you okay?" I finally asked, my voice low, hoping to draw him into a more private conversation.
"Yeah, I'm fine,"
he replied curtly, his eyes darkening momentarily before he turned his attention back to the table. I felt a pang of frustration. This was not how I had envisioned our Christmas dinner. As dessert was served, I felt my phone vibrate in my pocket. I discreetly glanced at it, my heart racing. It was a message from Jason. My pulse quickened as I read the words. "Can we meet after dinner? I need to talk to you." Anxiety twisted in my gut. I had to see him, had to explain, but the thought of Mark and the potential fallout sent a wave of panic over me. What if he found out? "Sarah, are you with us?" My mother's voice broke through my thoughts, pulling me back to the table. Everyone was looking at me expectantly, waiting for my response to a question I hadn't even heard. "Yes. Sorry, I was just thinking about dessert," I stammered, forcing a smile. "It's delicious, by the way." As the evening wore on, I tried to push my worries aside, to enjoy the festivities and the warmth of family, but the weight of my secret loomed larger with each passing moment. Mark's silence was deafening, and the tension between us felt palpable. I could feel his gaze on me, probing, questioning, as if he were trying to decipher the truth hidden behind my bright smile. Finally, as the last of the family settled in front of the television, I slipped away to the kitchen, needing a moment to breathe. I leaned against the counter, the cool granite grounding me in reality. I pulled out my phone again, staring at Jason's message. I knew I had to meet him, to face whatever he had to say, but the thought of leaving Mark alone with the family gnawed at my conscience. "Sarah?" Mark's voice broke through the quiet, and I turned to find him standing in the doorway, his expression unreadable. "Can we talk?" "Now?" I asked, my heart racing. "I thought you were with everyone." "I am, but I need to talk to you, now," he insisted, stepping further into the kitchen, closing the distance between us. "Okay," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. I knew we needed to address the distance growing between us, the unspoken words hanging in the air like a thick fog. But as I looked into his eyes, the apprehension that had been simmering all evening seemed to intensify. Just give me a moment," I said, trying to buy time. I needed to wrap my mind around everything before diving into whatever conversation awaited us. Before I could say anything else, my phone buzzed again. I glanced down, my heart sinking. Another message from Jason. "I can't wait any longer. You need to meet me." My mind raced. What was I going to do? I could feel the pressure building, the walls closing in. I looked up at Mark, who was now watching me intently, and for a moment, I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, uncertain of the leap ahead. "Sarah?" Mark's voice pulled me back, his brow furrowing in concern. "Are you okay?" I forced a smile, but inside, I was spiraling. I needed to manage the chaos I had created, but as I stood there, it felt like the ground beneath me was shifting, ready to swallow me whole. What would happen if I went to meet Jason? What would Mark do if he found out? "Yeah, I'm fine," I lied. But deep down, I knew I wasn't. The evening continued around me, but my mind was elsewhere, caught in a web of lies, secrets, and impending chaos. I took a deep breath, knowing that the decisions I made tonight would change everything. The festive atmosphere felt like a distant memory, overshadowed by the weight of my actions. And as I stood there, caught between two worlds, I couldn't help but wonder how much longer I could keep the truth hidden, how long before the fragile facade I had built would come crashing down. As I looked around the table, the twinkling lights and festive decorations seemed to mock the tension that hung in the air like a heavy fog. Laughter erupted from my sister-in-law, Jenna, as she recounted a story about her kids' antics, and I forced a smile, trying to blend in with the joy surrounding me. My heart raced whenever I caught Mark's eye. He sat at the far end of the table, his silence piercing through the laughter, casting a shadow over my carefully curated holiday spirit. Sarah, did you hear what Jenna said about the kids? My mother's voice pulled me from my thoughts. She was sitting beside me, her eyes bright with the joy of Christmas, completely unaware of the storm brewing just beneath the surface. You should take notes. You know how much fun they have during the holidays. Of course, Mom, I replied, my tone a bit too cheerful. I glanced at Mark again, catching him staring at his plate, his jaw clenched tightly. I wanted to reach out to him, to ask what was wrong, but the thought of bringing up anything serious in front of family felt like opening Pandora's box. Mark, you okay? I ventured, my voice low enough to avoid drawing attention. But he didn't look up. Instead, he shifted uncomfortably in his chair, and I felt a pang of guilt stab at me. Hadn't I promised myself to keep everything under wraps until after the holiday? I had convinced myself that we could get through this dinner without any drama. Sarah, pass the potatoes, my father barked, breaking the brief silence. I quickly grabbed the bowl and handed it to him, my hands trembling slightly. As the conversation flowed around me, I felt increasingly isolated. It was as if I was watching a movie where everyone was blissfully unaware of the impending disaster. Anyone interested in playing a game after dinner? Jenna suggested, her enthusiasm infectious. Sure, that sounds fun, I replied, forcing a smile. But Mark's eyes met mine again, and there was a silent communication between us that sent chills down my spine. I could see that he was brooding, and I had no idea how to pull him back to me, to make him understand that I was still the same person he married, despite my mistakes. Mark? My mother's voice interrupted my thoughts again. Are you going to join us? You've been so quiet tonight. Quiet.
I'm just enjoying the food,
he replied curtly, his voice lacking the warmth it usually held. I could feel the atmosphere shift slightly, the laughter dimming as family members exchanged glances. All right, let's not make this a somber dinner, my mother chuckled, but the laughter felt forced now, like a thin veneer over an unspoken tension. I caught my brother Jake looking at Mark with concern, as if he could sense something was off. I tried to focus on my plate, but the food lost its taste. I couldn't shake the feeling that Mark was holding back something monumental. The cryptic text from Jason still lingered in my mind, and I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. I was caught in a web of my own making, and it was only a matter of time before everything unraveled. Sarah, are you all right? My mother's voice broke through my haze again, and I looked up to see her studying me with a frown. You seem a bit out of it. I'm fine, Mom, just a little tired from all the cooking, I lied, forcing a smile. Maybe you should take a break and let Mark handle the cooking next year. Jenna chimed in, trying to lighten the mood. I can just imagine him in the kitchen trying to figure out how to boil water. Laughter erupted once more, but it felt distant to me. I could see the corners of Mark's mouth twitch in a half-smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. The contrast between the humor at the table and the turmoil inside me felt unbearable. As the dinner progressed, I could feel the weight of Mark's silence heavy upon us. He was a man of few words, but tonight his quietness was almost palpable, like a storm cloud ready to burst. I glanced around the table at my family's cheerful faces, and it made my heart ache. They had no idea what was hanging over us, and I felt a surge of shame. Mark, come on! We can't let you sit there all broody, Jake exclaimed, trying to coax him out of his shell. Let's hear one of your classic dad jokes. Yeah, lighten up, big guy, Jenna added, her voice playful. I'm good, thanks, Mark replied, his tone clipped. The table fell into an awkward silence, and I desperately searched for a way to ease the tension. Mark, why don't you tell us about your latest project at work? I suggested, hoping to shift the focus back to him. He met my gaze, and for a moment, I thought I saw a flicker of something. Resentment, pain, fury. But then it was gone, replaced by a stone-cold mask. "Nothing much to share, really," he said dismissively, turning his attention back to his plate. "Okay then, let's play a game," Jenna exclaimed, trying to salvage the mood. "How about charades? Everyone loves charades." The table fell into an awkward silence, and I desperately searched for a way to ease the tension. "Mark, why don't you tell us about your latest project at work?" I suggested, hoping to shift the focus back to him. He met my gaze, and for a moment I thought I saw a flicker of something: resentment, pain, fury. But then it was gone, replaced by a stone-cold mask. "Nothing much to share, really," he said dismissively, turning his attention back to his plate. "Okay then, let's play a game," Jenna exclaimed, trying to salvage the mood. "How about charades? Everyone loves charades." As the game began, I forced myself to participate, but my heart wasn't in it. I could feel Mark's eyes on me, scrutinizing every smile, every laugh, and it made me feel exposed. The laughter around the table became a distant echo, and I felt like an outsider in my own family, trapped in a facade of normalcy that was about to shatter. Then, just as I thought I could breathe again, I noticed Mark stand up abruptly, raising his glass. The cheerful chatter died down, and all eyes turned to him. My stomach dropped as a sense of dread washed over me. "I have a special toast," he said, his voice steady, yet laced with an undercurrent that sent shivers down my spine. "Mark, what are you doing?" I whispered, panic rising within me. But he didn't look at me. He was focused on the family, preparing to unleash whatever he had been holding back. "Here's to family," he began, raising his glass higher. The room was steeped in silence, and my heart raced as I felt the weight of his words. "To the bonds that hold us together, even when the truth threatens to tear us apart," he continued, and my breath hitched in my throat. I could see the confusion flicker across the faces of my family, and I felt the ground beneath me shifting. What was he about to say? I searched his face for any signs, any glimmers of what was coming, but all I found was a steely determination. "Mark, please," I whispered again, my voice barely a breath, but it was drowned out by the anticipation hanging in the air. And then, in that moment, I realized that Christmas would never be the same again. I took a deep breath, my heart pounding as Mark stood up to make his toast. The laughter and the clinking of glasses around the table faded into a distant hum, my focus narrowing solely on him. The festive lights twinkled above us, casting a warm glow that felt increasingly sinister in that moment. I could tell something was off, an unsettling energy thrumming in the air. Mark held his glass aloft, his expression inscrutable. "Everyone, if I could have your attention for just a moment," he began, his voice steady but laced with an intensity that made my stomach churn. I exchanged a glance with my sister Emily, who raised an eyebrow at me, a silent question written all over her face. I shook my head slightly, trying to convey that I had no idea what was coming. "To family," he continued, a semblance of a smile on his face. "And to truth." He paused, and I felt a chill run down my spine. "And to the things that might come to light, even when we least expect them." A murmur rippled through the room, and my pulse quickened. I could see my mother's brow furrow as she leaned in, curious. I opened my mouth to say something, to stop this before it escalated, but the words stuck in my throat. "Sarah," he said suddenly, his gaze locked onto mine, icy and unyielding. "I think it's time everyone knew the truth about you." My heart sank. I had never seen him like this, so cold and determined. There was an edge to his voice that sent shockwaves through me. "What are you talking about, Mark?" I managed to croak out, my voice trembling. He reached into his pocket, pulling out a manila envelope. I felt every eye on me, the weight of their gazes pressing down as Mark opened it with a deliberate slowness. I have here some very important documents that I believe we need to discuss. He pulled out the divorce papers, brandishing them like a sword. Gasps erupted around the table. "What is this?" my mother exclaimed, her voice rising in shock. "Mark, please," I pleaded, my voice barely a whisper. "Let's talk about this in private." I could feel the heat rising in my cheeks, the embarrassment clawing at me. "You don't need to do this here," but he was relentless. "No, Sarah, this isn't just about us anymore." His voice rose, echoing in the room. "This is about our family, about what you've done." I felt the walls closing in around me, the laughter and joy of Christmas evaporating into a suffocating silence. "What have I done?" I asked, my voice breaking. "You're scaring everyone." "Scaring everyone?" His voice dripped with sarcasm. "It's a little late for that, don't you think?" He turned to the family, his expression hardening. "I have proof that my wife has been cheating on me, with a coworker no less. Jason—" "Stop it!" I shouted, desperation flooding my voice. "This isn't fair, Mark. You're ruining Christmas. You're ruining everything." The tears threatened to spill, but I blinked them away, unwilling to show weakness. "Ruining everything?" he echoed, incredulous. "You think that's what I'm doing? You're the one who decided to betray your vows. You're the one who's been lying to everyone, including our child." At the mention of our child, something inside me twisted painfully. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice trembling. "What does our child have to do with this?" Mark reached into the envelope again, pulling out a piece of paper. "This," he said, holding it up for everyone to see. "A DNA test, proving that you've been unfaithful, and questioning whether our son is even mine." Silence enveloped the room. My heart raced, and I felt the blood drain from my face. "What?" I whispered, the word barely escaping my lips. "How could you—" "I had my suspicions," he said, his voice cold as ice. "And I did what any concerned father would do. I had a test done." He waved the paper in front of me, his expression a mixture of triumph and betrayal. "Do you want to explain this to our family, or should I?" I felt the world tilt beneath me, the ground shifting as the weight of his accusation crashed down. "Mark, please," I begged, my voice cracking. "You have to believe me. I love you, and our son is yours. This is all a misunderstanding." "Misunderstanding?" he scoffed. "You've been lying to me for months. How can I believe anything you say?" I opened my mouth to respond, but the words wouldn't come. The reality of his revelations settled heavily in the air, suffocating me. I felt like I was drowning in a tidal wave of shame and fear. My family was staring at me, some with pity, others with disbelief, as if they were witnesses to a car crash they couldn't look away from. "Sarah, is this true?" My father finally spoke, his voice low and filled with disappointment. "How could you do this?" "I didn't want to hurt anyone," I cried out, tears streaming down my face now. "It was a mistake. I was lonely. I was confused. But it didn't mean anything." "Didn't mean anything?" Mark shouted, his frustration boiling over. "You think that's enough? You think a casual fling is excusable? You think you can just walk away from this?" I felt lost, trapped in a whirlwind of emotions. "I was going to end it. I swear. I was going to tell Jason it was over, but—" "But what?" he interrupted, his voice relentless. "You didn't. You let it go on, and now you want to play the victim?" "Stop it!" Emily shouted, standing up from her chair, her face flushed with anger. "This is insane. You're all acting like children. Sarah, I don't condone what you did, but Mark, this isn't the way to handle it." "Handle it?" Mark's voice dripped with sarcasm. "What do you suggest? A family therapy session over the Christmas turkey?" I could feel the room shaking, the air thick with tension and unresolved emotions. I looked around the table, at the faces of my family. They were all watching, some in shock, others in anger, and I felt utterly exposed, stripped of any pretense of the perfect life I had worked so hard to maintain. "Maybe we should all take a step back," my mother suggested, her voice trembling. "This is a lot for everyone to process. Sarah, is there anything you want to say?" As I opened my mouth to speak, I realized that no words could adequately encapsulate the chaos in my heart. I felt like I was on trial, my life laid bare before the people I loved most. I began, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I felt the heat of shame wash over me, suffocating and relentless. Mark's face was set in stone, a man resolute in his anger and disappointment. The weight of my choices hung heavy in the room, and I knew that no matter what I said, I had already shattered the fabric of our lives. The reality of the situation settled in, a bitter pill that I couldn't swallow. I could only stand there, overwhelmed by the storm I had unwittingly unleashed. The moment Mark's words hung in the air, a suffocating silence enveloped the room. The laughter that had filled the space moments before was replaced by a tense stillness, broken only by the sound of my heart pounding in my ears. I could feel the heat rising in my cheeks, a mix of shame, anger, and disbelief churning inside me. My mother's shocked expression was the first to draw my attention, her mouth agape, eyes wide. "Sarah, how could you?" she blurted out, her voice trembling. The accusation was like a dagger, each word cutting deeper than the last. I wanted to scream that it wasn't true, that Mark had twisted everything, but the words lodged in my throat. "I can't believe this is happening," my father muttered, shaking his head in disbelief. "What the hell, Sarah?" "Dad, please," I whispered, my voice barely audible over the sound of rising chaos. Mark was pacing like a caged animal, the divorce papers crumpled in his fist, the DNA test results still hanging heavily in the air like a storm cloud. "You all deserve to know the truth," Mark shouted, his voice rising as he turned to face my parents. "Sarah's been lying to everyone, and now we're supposed to just pretend this is okay? I won't let her drag you all into this mess." "Dad, Mom, listen to me," I pleaded, desperation clawing at my insides. "This isn't what it looks like." "Not what it looks like?" Mark interrupted, his eyes blazing. "You think an affair is just a misunderstanding? You think our son isn't mine because you couldn't keep your legs closed?" "Oh my God, Sarah!" my mother gasped, her hand flying to her mouth in horror. "How could you do this to your family, to your child?" "Mom, please," I cried, my voice breaking. I could feel the tears welling up, threatening to spill over. "I made a mistake, but it doesn't change what I feel for our son." "Doesn't it?" Mark sneered, his contempt palpable. "You think I'd sign those papers if I believed him to be mine?" "Stop it! Just stop!" I shouted, my voice rising above the din. "You're not being reasonable." "Reasonable?" Mark laughed, a harsh sound that grated against my soul. "You think I'm the one being unreasonable? You've betrayed me in the worst way possible, and you expect me to sit here and listen to your excuses?" The tension in the room escalated, voices overlapping as my parents tried to process the chaos unfolding in front of them. My mother's face twisted in confusion and disappointment, while my father's jaw tightened, a look of quiet fury settling over him. "Mark, what do you want from her?" my father finally interjected, his voice steady, though I could hear the anger simmering just beneath the surface.
You can't just attack her like this in front of everyone. There are children here." "Children?" Mark scoffed, gesturing wildly. "What about our child? What about the fact that I might not even be his father?" I felt my heart drop at the accusation, my mind racing. How could he do this to me? To us? "Mark, you know that's not true. You know I love him," I implored, desperation lacing my words as I reached out, hoping for some flicker of understanding in his eyes. But all I saw was rage. "Love? Love doesn't put you in bed with another man. Love doesn't shatter a family on Christmas Day." He took a step toward me, the divorce papers still crumpled in his fist. "You've destroyed everything, Sarah." "I didn't mean for it to happen," I burst out, the weight of the moment crashing down on me. "I was lonely and I made a mistake. But that doesn't mean I don't love you or our son." "Lonely?" Mark laughed bitterly. "You think that excuses anything? You think you can just wave a magic wand and make this all go away?" My mother's voice trembled as she spoke again. "Sarah, how long has this been going on? How could you keep this from us?" "I thought I could fix it," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. "I thought I could end it before anyone found out. I thought—" "You thought what?" Mark interrupted, his voice rising. "That you could have your cake and eat it too? This isn't just about you anymore." I glanced at my father, whose face was a mask of disappointment. "Dad, Enough!" he bellowed, his patience wearing thin. "I don't want to hear another word about this until you've had time to think about what you've done. This is not how we handle family issues." Mark turned to my father, his expression defiant. "You think I'm the bad guy here? If I hadn't exposed her, she would have continued lying to you all." His voice cracked with raw emotion as he continued. "I'm not going to let her drag me down with her." "I'm not dragging anyone down!" I shouted, my emotion spilling over. "I made a mistake, but I am still your daughter. Don't you dare turn your back on me." "Then own up to it," my father insisted, his voice steady despite the chaos around us. "You need to take responsibility for your actions, Sarah." "Responsibility?" I shot back, feeling the anger boil inside me. "What about Mark? He's the one who brought this all out into the open, ruining Christmas for everyone." "Ruining Christmas?" Mark echoed, his voice rising. "You don't get to play the victim here. You've made this a nightmare for everyone." "Maybe you should have thought about that before you threw my life into a blender," I retorted, feeling the heat of the moment searing through me. "Maybe you should have thought about how this would affect our son." The room fell silent again, the weight of my words hanging heavy in the air. I could see the hurt on my parents' faces, the disappointment etched into their features. My mother's eyes glistened with unshed tears, while my father looked lost in thought. "I need air," I finally said, my voice barely above a whisper. I turned on my heel, the noise of the family gathering fading as I stormed out of the house, my heart racing and my mind a whirlwind of confusion and regret. Outside, the cold air hit me like a slap, grounding me in reality. I could hear the muffled sounds of my family arguing through the walls, a cacophony of accusations and hurt that I had unleashed. I wrapped my arms around myself, trying to stave off the chill that seeped into my bones. I couldn't stay there. I needed to find Jason, confront him about the DNA test, and figure out what this all meant for me, for us. It was the only way to reclaim some semblance of control over the spiraling chaos of my life. As I hurried down the snowy path, my heart raced with a mixture of fear and determination. I had to face the truth, no matter how painful it might be. But deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was losing everything I had ever cared about. As I stepped out into the biting cold, the door of our home slammed shut behind me, a cacophony of voices and accusations echoing through the walls. The festive lights twinkled mockingly against the dark night, illuminating the chaos I had just fled.
My heart raced as I scanned the snowy landscape, my breath visibly clouding in front of me. It was Christmas Day, and yet all I felt was a weight of despair and betrayal heavy on my chest. I didn't have to wait long. Just a few paces away, Jason emerged from the shadows, his familiar figure outlined against the white of the snow. He looked alarmed, his brow furrowed as he approached, his hands stuffed in the pockets of his coat. "Sarah?" he called, his voice laced with concern. "What's going on?" I inhaled sharply, a mix of relief and anger flooding through me. "You have to be kidding me. Did you see what just happened in there? Mark humiliated me in front of my family." I could feel the heat rising to my face as I confronted him. Jason's brow furrowed deeper. "I know. I saw. I can't believe he did that." "But Sarah, what about the DNA test? I didn't know anything about it until now." "Neither did I," snapped, the frustration boiling over as I paced in the snow. "I thought we had something real, Jason. Something worth fighting for. But now, everything is falling apart. My family thinks I'm a monster." He stepped closer, his hands raised in a gesture of peace. "I love you, Sarah. I thought you understood that. What Mark did was unforgivable. We can figure this out together." I shook my head, the tears pooling in my eyes. "You think love is enough? I've hurt my husband and my child. I don't even know if that child is mine. How could I live with myself if I'm not even sure I'm a good mother?" Jason's expression shifted from concern to frustration. "You're not a monster. You made a mistake and we can fix this. We just need to get away from here, away from all this chaos." I turned sharply to face him, my emotions boiling over. "Fix it? How? By running away? That's not a solution." My voice cracked, and I felt the weight of my choices crashing down around me. I can't just abandon everything I've built, my family, my home, my son. "Then let's talk about it," he said, his voice softer now. "We can find a way to make this work. Just tell me what you need." The sincerity in his voice tugged at my heart, but I couldn't shake off the guilt that clung to me. "What do I need? I need to know if my life was a lie. I need to know if my husband is right about the baby. What if I've destroyed everything and everyone I care about?" Jason stepped closer, his gaze fierce. "You haven't destroyed everything. You made a mistake, and we can figure this out. You still have a chance." I looked away, my breath hitching in my throat. "A chance at what? A chance to be with you while my family crumbles? I can't do that. I can't be the reason my son grows up without a father." "That's not what I want for you either." His voice was strained, and I could see the conflict within him. "But I care about you, Sarah. We can be happy together. Just give me a chance to prove it." Before I could respond, a sudden rustling in the nearby bushes made us both jump. I turned sharply, squinting into the darkness. There, just out of sight, a shadow lingered, watching us. My heart raced again, this time with a different kind of fear. "Who's there?" I called out, my voice trembling. The figure stepped into the light, revealing a tall man with familiar features. My stomach dropped as I recognized him. It was Mark's brother, David, the estranged sibling who had been absent from our lives for years. "What are you doing here?" I demanded, panic lacing my voice. "I came to see you," David replied, his tone calm but serious. "I know things are chaotic right now, but I need to talk to you. It's important." Jason glanced between us, his expression darkening with suspicion. "This isn't a good time, man. You should leave." I held up a hand to stop Jason, my curiosity piqued despite the tension. "What do you want, David?" He took a step closer, his eyes locking onto mine. I know about the situation with Mark, and I know things that might change everything for you." "What do you mean?" I asked, my heart racing as I tried to comprehend his words. David hesitated, glancing at Jason before continuing. "I can't explain everything here, but I have information about Mark that you need to know. It could change how you see this whole mess." I felt a jolt of hope mixed with dread. "Why should I trust you? You've been absent for so long." "I know I haven't been around, but I've been watching from a distance. I care about my brother, and I care about you too. There's so much you don't know." Jason stepped forward, his voice tense. "Whatever you have to say it to me too. If this involves Sarah, I want to know." David's gaze flickered to Jason, and for a moment I could see the tension between them. "This isn't just about you, Jason. This is about a family that's teetering on the edge of destruction." "Then spill it," I urged, my heart racing. "What do you know?" David took a deep breath, as if gathering his thoughts. "Mark isn't the man you think he is. There are things in his past that he's never shared with you, things that could change everything about your marriage and your child." I felt my breath hitch. "What do you mean?" "There are family secrets, dark ones, that Mark has kept hidden. I can't tell you all of them here, but if you're willing to listen, I can help you understand what you're really dealing with." Jason's grip on my arm tightened, and I could feel the tension radiating off him. "This sounds like a trap. You're just trying to manipulate her, David." "Enough!" I shouted, my voice rising above the wind. "I need to know the truth. If there's something, anything, that could change how I see Mark, I have to hear it." David nodded, his expression serious. "Meet me tomorrow. I'll explain everything, but you need to promise me that you'll keep an open mind." I hesitated, glancing at Jason, whose face was a mixture of anger and concern. "Okay," I finally said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I'll meet you. But I need to be careful. I have to protect my family." "Just remember, Sarah," David said, his eyes intense. "The truth can be both a blessing and a curse. You have to be prepared for whatever comes next." As David retreated into the shadows, I felt a mix of determination and dread. The night was still, the chaos of the evening lingering in my mind. I turned to Jason, whose expression was clouded with uncertainty. "What did he mean?" he asked, his voice low. "What could he possibly have to say that would change everything?" "I don't know," I replied, feeling lost in a sea of confusion. "But I need to find out. I can't let this lie continue to tear my life apart." In that moment, I realized I was standing at a crossroads. The choices I made from here could either lead to redemption or to further ruin. One thing was certain: I had to face the truth, no matter how painful it might be. As I stood outside, the cold air bit at my skin, but it wasn't just the temperature that made me shiver. I had just confronted Jason over the chaos that had erupted back at the house, and I felt a whirlwind of emotions swirling inside me. My heart was racing, not just from the confrontation, but from the realization of how quickly everything had spiraled out of control. I could still hear the echoes of my family's shocked gasps and accusations ringing in my ears. "Sarah, I swear I love you!" Jason exclaimed, his voice laced with desperation. "None of this was supposed to happen." I shook my head, trying to drown out his words. "You think that makes this any better? You've destroyed my life, Jason." "Destroyed your life? You were the one who called me, remember? You're the one who wanted to keep this a secret." "Because I didn't know it would end like this. I didn't think Mark would find out." "Maybe you should have thought about that before you decided to cheat on him," he shot back, his frustration boiling over. "Why didn't you just leave him if you were so unhappy?"
Because I had a family. I had a life. I didn't want to hurt anyone, least of all my daughter. The mention of our daughter sent a fresh wave of guilt crashing over me. I couldn't believe I had put her through this. Jason stepped toward me, his expression softening. I never wanted to hurt you, Sarah. I thought we had something special. Special? I scoffed, the bitterness rising in my throat. This wasn't special. It was a mistake. A huge mistake. As I turned away, I noticed a shadow lurking at the edge of the driveway. My heart skipped a beat. I squinted into the darkness, and as the figure stepped into the light, I froze. Sarah? The voice was low and familiar. Mark's brother? I gasped, recognizing him immediately. Chris had been estranged from Mark for years, and I hadn't seen him since our wedding. He looked older, worn down by life's trials, but there was a glint in his eye that sparked a flicker of hope. What are you doing here? I asked, my voice trembling. I came to see you, he said, taking a step closer. I heard about what happened inside. We need to talk. Now? Here? After everything that's just happened? I glanced back toward the house, feeling the weight of my family's turmoil pressing down on me. Yes, now. It's important, he insisted, his tone urgent. I hesitated for a moment, my mind racing. Would talking to Chris only complicate things further? But a part of me, desperate for clarity, felt compelled to listen. Fine. What do you have to say? Chris took a deep breath, his brow furrowing as if the words he was about to say were heavy on his heart. I know Mark's been acting like a saint in all of this, but you deserve to know the truth about him. What are you talking about? I asked, my confusion deepening. Years ago, before he met you, Mark was involved in something complicated, something that he hasn't told you about, and it's relevant to everything that's happening now. I crossed my arms, skepticism flooding my veins. What could possibly be relevant? He's the one who caught me cheating. Is he? Chris challenged, his eyes narrowing. Look, Sarah, I haven't been around for a while, but I know my brother. He's not innocent in all of this. There are reasons for his anger that go beyond just your affair. What do you mean? My heart pounded in my chest as I leaned in closer, desperate for answers. He never told you about his first marriage, did he? Chris continued. It ended badly, and he lost a lot more than just a wife. He lost his daughter. The words hit me like a freight train. What? He has a daughter? Yes. She's living with her mother now, and the circumstances of their separation were messy to say the least. Mark still carries that pain, and it's shaped who he is today. He's terrified of losing again, of being betrayed again. I shook my head in disbelief. Why would he keep that from me? Why wouldn't he tell me? Because he thinks if he opens up, it will make him vulnerable. But here's the thing. His fear and anger are clouding his judgment. It's not just about your affair. It's about his past, and how it's affecting his present. My mind raced. Could this really be true? I had always sensed an undercurrent of something darker in Mark's demeanor, but I had never connected the dots. So what are you saying? That I should just go back in there and let him destroy me? Let him ruin my life because of his past? I'm saying you need to confront him. Both of you need to face the truth together. There's more to this than just betrayal and anger. You owe it to yourself and to your daughter to find out what's really going on. Just then, I heard a commotion from inside the house. Shouts, accusations, and the clattering of chairs filled the air. My family was still in turmoil, and I felt the weight of their expectations pressing down on me. I can't go back in there yet, I murmured, my heart racing. I need time to process all of this. Take the time you need, Chris said softly.
But don't let fear dictate your next move. You have the power to change the narrative. You need to fight for your truth. I nodded slowly, feeling a strange sense of resolve bubbling within me. I'll think about what you said, Chris. But right now, I can't face Mark again without knowing the whole story. Just remember, Chris added, his voice firm yet compassionate. There's always more than one side to a story. Listen to your heart, Sarah. As he turned to leave, I felt a surge of determination. Perhaps this was the turning point I needed. I could no longer allow my life to be dictated by fear and guilt. I had to confront not just Mark, but my own choices, my own truth. With a final glance at Chris, I took a deep breath and headed back toward the house. The chaos inside awaited me, but so did the chance for redemption. I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. I was fighting for my family, for my daughter. The road ahead would be rocky, but I was ready to face whatever came next.